making it on Sunday too, but so far it's still Saturday. But the times, I mean, the times are pretty flexible. They range from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Oh, okay.
That being said, it doesn't mean that that whole day is available. It just has to do with which judge is available at which slot, I guess.
Yeah.
So hopefully by next week we'll have a clear picture of the times available.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And I'll let you know if Sunday. I mean, they have. Let me see. I mean, Sunday. I think they are doing Sunday actually, because Sunday's in right now. In the evening, like the 24th, from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. So that may also be an option. I mean, I know it's not the funnest way to spend a Sunday night. But if that's the only common time, then it's something to consider as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, so that's pretty much the only thing. And this is just for the like your division, so you'd only be going against someone you'd actually go against, like possibly the day of. Okay, I think that's really it from my end. So pretty much for today, we have first of all, we have 2 weeks left together, which is pretty crazy. 2 sessions left at least before the tournament. So like I mentioned before, the last 2 sessions are really going to be devoted to practice debates. So ideally by next session, I would like for you guys to have your case, perfected, I guess, for lack of better words, and transferred onto note cards. I did leave you guys feedback if you attach your case, but there's still a couple of you who did not. But the sooner I can give you feedback, the sooner you can revise it based on that feedback. If for whatever reason you can't get it done by next week, it's not a huge deal. You can just, read it off the screen or whatever it may be. But if you're not going to debate next week, then definitely the following week is the goal. So for today, we have 2 options. So I did a practice debate in my last class. So if you would like, for those that are super eager to debate, we can do a practice debate today as well, just to kind of get in the mindset of it. Or if you guys would like, you can just present your opening case, and then we can just do cross-examinations after. Anyone have a strong inclination towards either option? So if we were to do a practice debate, I know, Anushka, your case is, still pending at this point. So I'm guessing you would not be ready for a debate today, right? So that would leave us with, if you're with Sam, wait, Lindsay, you're with Helen, right?
Vanessa.
You're with Vanessa. Wait, is Vanessa here? Did we lose Vanessa? Oh no, she's here. Okay. So, sorry, Lindsay and Vanessa, and then Helen and Liz. Would you 4 be ready if we were to do a practice debate? Okay, I think Vanessa just ditched us, so I guess that's a no.
I'm still putting.
Here.
What happened? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Lindsay, what were you going to say?
I mean, I'm still working on my con case just because I originally had pro, but if we want to run the current pro, which is Vanessa's, I'm good with that.
Okay, we'll see when Vanessa's back. What about you, Helen?
I'm kind of sick today, so it might not be very clear what I'm saying. So I don't know if we do have to go today, then that'll be fine, but I think it'll just be a little hard to hear me.
Okay, so I think it's better than we just wait till next week, because I don't want you to strain your voice, Helen, and I don't want to force you guys if you're not ready. But at least this way next week will be a heads up. So Vanessa, I decided we're just not going to do the practice debates today. But I would still want you guys to at least present your opening cases. Helen, I saw your comment real quick on the case, because I think you had pro and con, and I left feedback for one of them. You wanted me to do this other one too, right? Because that's the one you're presenting on. Okay, so I'll go back and do that. And anyone else who did not yet attach their case, do so. Even if you're still working on it, that's the idea, that I just want to see what thoughts you have floating around. That way I can guide you where you need it to be, I guess.
Yeah, I haven't submitted mine yet, but I will do that after this.
Okay, I mean, it's okay if it's not finished. It's just so that way I can just kind of see what you're leaning towards. And that way I can, either give you some sort of shortcut or deviate you away from that path if I feel like that may not be the most strategic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's you and I think Sam also, which is why I was a little weird about you guys because I haven't really heard from you guys recently. But as long as if she doesn't join us today, Ava, I can shoot her an email and maybe like CC you on it or something just so we get some sort of communication going. Which reminds me, I need to finish attending. All right, so why don't you guys take a minute to open up your cases or at least what you have of it so far and maybe get some flow paper because at least that way you can practice flowing and theoretically thinking how you would cross-examine an opponent. And then we can just present our opening cases.
I'm gonna go print and get flow paper.
Okay, go ahead. All right, so are we ready? Somewhat ready? And again, not to worry at this point, it's really just practice, like just practicing your opening case, hopefully getting some feedback and definitely practicing flowing, because as you guys know, it's a lot of information being presented at once. And you might be in the position where you have to cross-examine right immediately after. So it's good practice to just get everything written down, and start thinking about how you would challenge those points, I guess. All right, any volunteers want to go first? All right, in that case, let's start with Lindsay. Sorry if I took you by surprise.
So I just have notes right now because I started researching con last week. I can read you through my notes, but I don't have a formal case. I'm sitting down to write it this weekend.
Okay, that makes sense. Because you were pro, possibly.
I was pro before,
and...
but now I'm con because I switched with
partners.
Okay,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
You and Vanessa, I think, were both open to switching. Right, so I'm just taking note of that. New con case. And Vanessa, you're pro then? Yeah. Okay. All right, Lindsay, I'll come back to you, but it's okay if it's just notes. At least we can just listen into your contention. All right, what about Anushka?
I guess I'll go, but like since I had to switch from con to pro, I only have one contention, so
That's okay. You're all gonna do it by next week, so that way I have something to look at and you have something to present. But yeah, that's absolutely fine. So I won't keep time for this one since it's not a full case. But just kind of we'll just use it to listen in.
okay. Okay, 1 second. Okay, should I stand up? Okay.
You can. Yeah, thanks for reminding me.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you, we see you. Looks good.
Okay. My time starts now. If there were a long term, I'd say that was fine. In fact, it'd make my life a lot simpler, to tell you the truth, said Justice Stephen Breyer in 2012. This shows that even justices believe that a term should be put in place. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States for all cases appearing under the Constitution or laws. Hi, my name is Anushka, and my partner and I affirm the resolution that the justices of the United States Supreme Court should have term limits. We affirm the resolution because the mental capacity of the older members of court may affect their decisions, and it may give too much power to one person for too long. Our first contention is that the mental capacity of the older members of court may affect their decisions. It is estimated that 20% of people ages 55 or older experience some type of mental health concern, states an article by the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. It has been a proven fact that with age, one's body degenerates. Because of the lifetime tenure put in place for Supreme Court justices, there is a great risk of mental health issues which could be catastrophic for everyone in America. In a study, people over the age of 65 tended to be more inconsistent when making decisions, in which there was one obviously correct answer. This inconsistent decision making in the hands of these justices, this inconsistent decision making has put great harm to many civilians, and it could be detrimental to countless lives. Even though one is allowed to retire, many times justices don't want to. The oldest person to serve in the Supreme Court was 90 years old. Being this old may affect one's decisions, potentially hurting other civilians. Because it is an unfortunate fact of life that physical and mental capacity sometimes diminishes with age, the people may wish to replace some older judges in order to satisfy the legitimate public interest in maintaining a judiciary fully capable of performing judges' demanding tasks, states Sandra Day O'Connor, a retired justice. This just shows that court justices believe that we should stop mental health problems in the Supreme Court, and the only way to do this is with term limits. Term limits will help prevent justices from having mental health issues affect their decisions, as it puts a specific amount of time on their power. Okay. I messed up like midway through, so that's why I added time, because I don't know, something got cut off and then it was just bad. So
Okay. Oh, sorry. I didn't notice, so I'm sure you were fine. All right. So anyone want to practice cross-examination? And this is an easy one since it's only one contention. And my goal is that you each have to go at least once. So if I were you, I would seize this opportunity. Okay, I guess I'm gonna have to call on someone then. Liz, let's go to you. Do you want to take a minute to prep?
Well, I'm cross-examining her.
Yeah. Just some friendly practice.
it's easy. I already know how to cross-sex myself.
I kind of missed out on the second half of your second contention, but I can try your first contention.
Well, there was only one, I think. She introduced both contentions, right? Right, Anushka? Did I?
Only one.
Yeah, she introduced both of them, I think, in the
Oh, okay. Maybe
but it
that's
don't
why.
have to do with one. Yeah,
Maybe I missed part of the first. I don't know.
it's okay. It's just practice.
Okay.
I can start us off by crossing myself
Cross-examining yourself.
out because I need to find evidence for one specific thing, but I won't give it away.
Yeah, don't say yeah, because let's see what Liz can come up with. And it's okay, Liz. This is a good life lesson. So that way, you know, the day of the tournament to not, lose part of the debate. And if you did, if worst comes to worst, Liz, you can just ask her to repeat um her evidence, and then on the spot, kind of come up with a follow up.
Okay. I don't. I have like one question to ask. Okay.
No pressure. It's okay.
I'm not gonna take up the whole 2 minutes.
That's okay.
Okay. My time starts now. So for your only contention, do you have any examples of how aging or different reasons cause the justices to make bad decisions?
See, that's the evidence I need. So that was easy. So
that was a really weird question.
Well, she kind of gave me the answer right away. She said, "No, I don't have any."
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's the.
Well, I mean, at least you kind of found the main flaw there. The other thing, Anishka, I would just kind of prepare for, I guess. Like, as you were talking, it almost seemed like your contention is kind of leaning towards the solution of a mandatory retirement age as opposed to term limits. So if an opponent is able to get you to agree that there should be retirement age, then in a way they win because the resolution states that justices of the Supreme Court should have term limits. So by finding an alternative, it's almost like it's almost undermining your argument in that sense. So I would just kind of be careful of that direction because it seemed like your evidence is heavily weighed on early retirement or required retirement age as opposed to term limits per se. Because, like especially when you said that, the little statistic about ages 55 and up, 20% of people, I think, ages 55 and up have some sort of health concern or something like that. A term limit wouldn't necessarily fix that because they can go into office at the age of 55 for all we know. So just kind of be careful of that direction that an opponent may possibly try to do as well. But yeah, okay. Other than that, it was good. All right, who wants to go next? How about you, Ava? Since I haven't really heard anything from you for the past month.
Oh boy. Okay. So I have my contentions all set up. I'm not like my presenting skills of them may not be completely up to par. Also, I have a feeling this is gonna be like way over 4 minutes.
It's okay. We can always work on that.
I have a lot of stuff to say.
It's okay. I mean, I'm not going to stop you this time because we just want to see, what you're thinking. Well, I just want to see what you're.
Is it like totally okay if I just like read off my phone completely? Like I just have it like right here.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. And it's really just practice just to get you presenting and just for us to kind of gauge, where you're at. No pressure at all. So most of you I'm seeing are just kind of reading off the speech anyway. And when you have a note card, you probably will be, relying on it as well. So even though you're reading off of it, try to still use eye contact and kind of make it sound natural and not robotic because sometimes kids the day of the tournament still have that roboticness to their voice when they're reading it as opposed to making it seem natural.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, the introduction may seem a little rushed. I'm sorry about that as well.
It's okay, no worries.
Okay, so my time starts now. I'm Ava Gamble, and my partner and I are here today to affirm the proposition should Supreme Court judges serve a lifetime tenure. We believe that Supreme Court judges should serve a lifetime tenure for 3 contentions. The first being maintaining checks and balances within the Congress. The second, maintaining independence of SCOTUS from the rest of Congress. And the third one being keeping judicial activism out of the Supreme Court. For our first contention, checks and balances. Without the pressure of the current political climate potentially affecting a judge's position on the court, the Supreme Court judges will be able to achieve true neutrality. The judges will be allowed to do their jobs thoroughly and fairly without political bias. Columbia law professor Thomas W. Merrill, at a debate on the issue in 2014, said term limits could change the way the public thinks about the court, making them connect it more with the elections rather than seeing it as an independent issue. I quote, "Term limits would recast the role of the court to reflect a president's political views, not the subtle role prescribed in the Constitution," Merrill said. In retrospect, making the Supreme Court judges have a lifetime tenure would make their jobs not just about making fair decisions based on the law, but would make it more geared towards the political climate of the current day and age. The beauty of a lifetime tenure is that Supreme Court judges are able to set aside any political bias that may be in the air at the time and just focus on making sure they're making the best decision for the case they are presented with. My second contention is a lack of independence that may arise with term limits. Term limits could easily cause the public to view SCOTUS as a more political body rather than an independent one. Any system of turnover is subject to politics, and the laws should be separated from politics entirely, which is why there should not be any term limits. According to an argument made by Eastman and Stefan Vladek, a professor at the University of Texas, term limits could reduce independence and could allow for more money to influence the judicial system. If judges were forced to retire when they're 60, or if they're forced to give up their jobs after their limit has expired, there might be an incentive rule in favor for an industry or an interest that would hire them in later years. The same source claims, the more we impose constraints on the justices, whether as a matter of statute or constitutional amendment, the more of a precedent we set for the further inroads into the justices and the court's authority. That was a quote. Although there are more important examples to the contrary, the political branch has generally respected and protected the independence and autonomy of the third branch, even if especially when the courts have ruled against them. Imposing term limits would be a powerful contrary assertion of democratic power at the expense of the counter-majority of the judiciary. My third and final contention is keeping judicial activism out of the Supreme Court. Judicial activism refers to judicial rulings that are suspected of being based on personal opinion rather than on existing law. It is sometimes used as an antonym of judicial restraint. The definition of judicial activism and the specific divisions that are activists are controversial political issues. One of the main concerns shared by those who support term limits, however, is that many experts say that term limits won't solve this issue. According to the same source I mentioned before from the University of Texas, the real con of the SCOTUS term limits is that the biggest problem facing the court is not addressed, judicial activism. And I quote, "I think it does not target the real problem of judicial activism. One activist judge passing the baton to another does not create a check on judicial activism." In conclusion, my partner and I believe that the Supreme Court should not impose term limits, and they should continue to serve a lifetime tenure for three contentions. The first being that we need to maintain checks and balances in the Congress. The second being that term limits being imposed would make SCOTUS a less independent branch of government. And the third being that judicial activism, one of the biggest problems SCOTUS faces at the time, would not be addressed. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ava. So that was pretty good, actually. And it was 4 minutes and 36 seconds. So it wasn't, severely over. Yeah, totally fixable. Anyone want to practice cross-examination? Well, I see there's a lot of excitement today for the tournament, for the debate. All right, so I think I'm going to let you guys off the hook then with cross-examinations today, since you're all going to do it next week anyway, and the week after when you go through the whole debate. Did you want to go, Tim?
I would like to cross-examine, but ideally against a pro case as opposed to a neg case, if that's possible.
Sure. So, wait, this was a pro case, though. So do you want to do this one?
Hurricane. I
think
have
it was
this.
pro.
I have this case as being neg because,
Oh, you prefer it to be negative. Sorry, I thought you meant you prefer it to be pro.
as in, like, yeah.
Okay, fair enough, I guess. All right, so we'll just keep going for time's sake, and then if we do get to a case where you would like to cross-examine, let me know, and we'll play it that way, I guess. So that way I'm not forcing you.
I'll be right back. That alarm was for something I have to do really quick. So
okay, you're good. Thank you for presenting, though. Go
I'll
ahead.
be right back.
Okay. All right. In the meantime, who would like to go next?
I can go.
Okay, go ahead, Tim.
My speech isn't printed because my printer decided it wanted to goof itself. So is it fine if
You always decide to print it last minute, like right when we start class. But
I can't really argue that.
It's okay, because I know next week we'll have it all ready, maybe even on note cards.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
All right. Let me know when I can begin.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay. All right. In that case, my time starts now. Justice cannot be for one side alone, but must be for both. Eleanor Roosevelt. Justice is one of the highest duties of society, and it is best represented by the court system, especially the Supreme Court. The justices of the Supreme Court currently hold their positions until they die or they retire, but some now want to change this fundamental part of the court. My partner and I are here to negate the resolution that the Supreme Court needs term limits. Our two contentions are that the judicial branch is too different from the other branches for term limits to work, and that term limits will not solve any of the actual problems. Contention 1. The judicial branch is different from the other two branches. The judicial branch is substantially different function from the other two branches. So while term limits work for the other two branches, they would be disastrous here. The purpose of the legislative branch is to create laws that best represent the constituents that elected them. And likewise, the executive branch best serves to represent the ideals of the nation. So term limits make sense there. But the judicial branch is different. The judicial branch's job is to interpret the law and serve justice. It is not to make justice or the law follow the will of the political leanings of the people, but rather to interpret the law as is just and as is written. A justice cannot do this when he is afraid to make an unpopular decision for fear that it might cost him his seat after his term ends. A justice that needs to fear the wrath of the ballot becomes not a justice serving the Constitution, but a mere politician doing whatever it takes to hold his seat. But that is not the worst evil that would come from term limits on the court. As it stands, a justice is set up with a job until he dies or retires for good. Set term limits in place, and a justice that fails to win back his seat might find himself out of a job. So, like so many congressmen, if some business or industry were to offer money and a job, a justice on a term limit would likely take it. To put this problem of bribery in perspective, gun rights organizations gave $5.8 million as campaign contributions to congressmen and women, according to MarketWatch last year. And even more staggering, according to The Verge, congressmen and women took $101 million from the ISP industry during the net neutrality fight. As of right now, justices are nearly impenetrable to bribery. So to institute term limits and allow the rot of bribery to infest our nation's highest courts would do irreparable harm to our democracy. These are the reasons lifetime tenure was implemented all those years ago, and they still stand. Contention 2. Term limits fail to address the problems at hand. Not only would adding term limits to the court prevent the court from truly performing its function, it would also fail to fix one of the most commonly argued reasons to instate it. Many who argue for term limits argue that the system allows for some presidents to have disproportionate effects on government policy. However, according to the BBC, quote, one proposal being discussed is to limit justices' terms to 18 years to mitigate the challenges longevity is creating. But when we modeled the impact of this term limit proposal, new problems arose. When applied to all future justices, as well as those currently on the Supreme Court, the plan increased the number of new appointees over the next 100 years to 49, up from 25. but it also increased the chances that a president could appoint a majority of justices. In fact, instituting an 18-year term limit creates a 43% chance that a president serving 2 terms could appoint the majority of justices. This power to appoint a majority of justices has only been afforded to 6 presidents in the past, not including Washington. And this isn't the only problem term limits fail to solve. Many argue that term limits depoliticize the court, but according to Columbia Law School professor Thomas W. Merrill, term limits would actually make these court statements more political, as the public would associate the addition of a justice to the court with an election. Again, making justices little more than common politicians. So, in fact, term limits give presidents more disproportionate power rather than helping the issue, and they don't even depoliticize the court. For these reasons, Judge, we ask for a neg ballot.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you, Tim. So that was 4 minutes and 43 seconds. So you're also a little over. I think if anything, your first contention can probably be minimized a little bit. But overall, I think it was pretty solid. I think both contentions are pretty strong, which is really good. Okay. Anyone want to practice cross-examining this one? Big one. Anushka, really?
Like, I want to cross-examine. It's just, I don't really have that many questions. So, like, if someone wants to cross-examination, do a cross-ex after I do my, like, 3 questions, then...
It's okay. We're doing it for fun today. Next week will be an actual practice debate. This week is just to practice for yourself. So even if you don't finish, like, fill in the time, it's okay. It's really just good practice just to kind of anticipate what your opponent may say, how you would respond, keeping me entertained. There's, a lot of perks to this.
Okay. Like, I don't really have questions as of right now, but I thought of a couple, but I know how he's going to answer this, but I'm going to say them anyway. Okay.
Okay, it's a good one. Your opponent's predictable. So not that Tim's predictable, but
okay. So you said that. Okay, wait. My cross-ex time starts. But so you said that the president will have more power by being able to appoint more justices. Correct?
Yes.
So you said it would increase from 49 justices to 25, from 25 currently.
The statistic is that over the next 100 years, with the current system, it is...
I got it. Okay. So wouldn't this actually help diversify the court? Because as a statistic showed, that the court should be okay. Wait, give me a second.
You're onto something.
No cards, it would work because I have this evidence somewhere. But that, like, it was a majority of white male citizens as justices previously. So wouldn't this actually diversify the court?
So here's the thing about that. So while the proposed term limit would increase the amount of justices being appointed, so one could theoretically argue that this would diversify the court. However, the president still wouldn't have any extra incentive.
This is where you cut him off because he said what you needed him to say.
Wouldn't have any incentive to appoint anyone other than the people he's already appointing. There's still no incentive to appoint more diverse individuals, so it's really not helping that much. And not only that, but it's still giving these specific presidents, 43% of all 2-term presidents are getting the power to completely shape the majority of the court.
Okay, I wouldn't cut him off when he admitted it. I just wanted to see what he had to say because he's my partner. So yeah.
I see what you did there. But yeah, no, I think it was good. I think he responded well. Tim, I would just reverse the order of the way you present that, because your opponent is automatically going to cut you off once you say one can argue that it will, because you just admitted that there is a possibility of that. So I would just reverse it. But I think it was a good question. I think you answered it well. Anushka, you wouldn't. I try not to be too direct though, because if you ask your opponent, like, "Oh, well, wouldn't this just diversify the court or whatever it may be?" Most likely they would just say no. So you want them to admit it without directly doing, because it's very rare someone will say, give you what you want just like that. So ideally, you would just kind of build small questions into getting your opponent to admit it.
So how would I like phrase that question if I were to do it like less directly?
I mean, you might even just start with the idea of the the benefits of having more justices circulate, I guess, in the pool of it. And then kind of have that lead to a possible diversity. I mean, the thing is that there isn't much evidence. I mean, it's not like there is heavy evidence on either side, but I would start by getting with the idea of the benefits of having more justices rotate through the courts, and just kind of starting with that. And then in your attack case, that's when you can actually build your own argument how this can actually potentially diversify the court. But I don't think you would really get an opponent to admit that from a cross-examination, or at least you can try, but if you don't see it going there, I would just save that for an attack case, but at least get your opponent to admit the benefits of it, and then go from there, I guess.
Okay.
All right, so who's left? Helen, Liz, Lindsay, and Vanessa. All right, so we're going to get right to it then, so that way we can get through everyone. I'm just going to go in that order. So, Helen, I know you're not feeling too great, but are you ready to present your opening case?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't worry, I'm like sniffling over here too, so you're not alone.
Sorry, I dropped something.
It's okay.
So I have like a pretty short first contention and then like a really long second contention. So I need to add on to the first one, but I don't really know what to say for it, so.
It's okay. This is the one that I'll jump in and maybe I can kind of give you like a sub contention or something underneath it.
Okay.
But for now, that's good.
Okay, my time starts now. The founders set no term limits for justices so they could prevent the legislative and executive branches from manipulating the courts. The wording of Article 3 means that neither the president nor Congress can institute term limits or a pay cut, ensuring judges are secure in their job and beholden to neither branch's whims. Most federal judges exit by way of death or resignation, with impeachment coming into play sparingly. Only 15 federal judges in U.S. history have ever been impeached, and never a Supreme Court justice. Hello, my name is Helen Zhao, and my partner and I negate the resolution for two reasons. A president could ultimately decide the majority of justices, and term limits could allow for more money and other factors to influence the system. Contention 1. A president could ultimately decide the majority of justices. Limiting justices' terms will eventually increase the number of new appointees over the next 100 years from 25 to 49, but it also increases the chances that a president could appoint a majority of justices. In fact, instituting a term limit creates a 43% chance that a president serving 2 terms could appoint the majority of justices. In the history of the Republic, only 5 presidents, aside from George Washington, have been able to appoint more than 5 justices. This could throw the country into political chaos, with each new president appointing new justices of their party. Contention 2. Term limits could allow for more money and other factors to influence the system. According to an argument made by Eastman and Stefan Vladek, a professor at the University of Texas, term limits could reduce independence and allow for more money to influence the system. If judges were forced to retire early, there might be an incentive rule in favor of an industry or interest that would then hire them in their later years. A problem with term limits is that the justices would only be able to serve a certain amount of time on the bench, afterwards which they would need to retire and find a new job. They would feel pressure to find a job, so their decisions in the court might be subject to bias and corruption, because they might make biased decisions towards the fields that they think they might want to work in after they leave. The Supreme Court also might be more prone to bribery because right now, the justices are on the court for life and are paid well enough to live off that money for a very long time. However, if they have term limits, they would be pressured to make as much money as possible to sustain themselves after they come off of the Supreme Court. Therefore, people might bribe the justices to make decisions which favor them in exchange for money. Without lifetime job security, judges might feel obligated to bow to the wishes of the president, Congress, or the public, rather than confining their work strictly to the questions of constitution. For example, Victor Barron, a state Supreme Court justice from New York, was accused of taking $18,000 in cash stuffed into a business-size envelope in exchange for signing a court order in a civil case, according to the official in a criminal complaint charging him with accepting a bribe. If this has already happened in the lower courts, why wouldn't it happen in the Supreme Court? In conclusion, because eradicating lifetime appointments causes more problems, such as how the president could ultimately decide the majority of justices, and that term limits could allow for more money and other factors to influence the system, we negate the resolution and urge a con ballot. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Helen. Yeah, I see what you're saying about the first one being relatively short in comparison to the second one. But I mean, the second one's definitely very solid. I'll go into the document and leave feedback then. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Helen. Also, real quick, any update on the day of the tournament? Like if you're...
I'm pretty sure I'll be going.
Okay, perfect. I still have my note that you might not attend.
Yeah, because I have something the week after the tournament, so I was worried about that being moved, but I think they set the date, so it's fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay. All right, so next we just have Lindsay and Vanessa. Is that right? Okay. All right. Lindsay, do you want to go next? And just walk us through the contentions you're thinking.
Yeah. I can just walk you through. So for my first contention, I'm going to be running something basically on corruption within the Supreme Court. However, I'm going to take a slightly different angle than other people have been doing. I think I'd like to, I'm working to find an example of another country that implements term limits and find an example of corruption within that Supreme Court and try to argue that, because I think it's a strong argument in that it sort of proves the opportunity for the same thing to happen here. And it's not just a theory, it's a legitimate possibility. And I think the possibility of corruption is a huge issue.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. The only thing to be careful of is just you have to make sure you find another country or society that runs in a similar way that this country does.
I'm looking through like the UK right now, but I don't know if I'll be able to find anything. And then for my second contention, I'm still a little unsure. I was considering running a gridlock case, basically saying like the amendment required for term limits would lead to like such political gridlock that it would be an issue, but I don't know how strong that is. So I'm also considering doing like a more legal-based case, basically just arguing based on the Constitution, this is why our founding fathers wanted it, and this is why the same thing holds true to keep politics out of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, I think they both definitely have potential politics.
Can I add something to that? Actually, I just want to tell you because I found something out today. I was looking through like Article 3 of the Constitution, and this is just my interpretation, but I'd be careful with that because I'm not really sure like the judicial system we have set up today is really what the founding fathers had.
Got it.
Yeah, so I just like be careful with that one because that was something that I was gonna run. Yeah, so I was,
Are you pro? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, that was a good heads up. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I also have something that a piece of evidence that I found before, because about like term limits and stuff and the Constitution. It says the Constitution was written at a time when life tenure meant living into your 15th, because that's what life expectancy was. So they didn't really expect like over 30 years tenure.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's also something to watch out.
Got it.
Yeah, these are good, like good tips to kind of keep in the back of your mind because I know you're still exploring the contentions.
So is running gridlock like okay? Because I know I've done it before, but I don't know if it would work in this like format or if it's allowed.
I mean, I feel like it's kind of risky to be honest. I would lean towards no, just because I don't know how well it will work in this case. The one thing I was thinking of is that if you want to take the direction of like, but this is more like theorizing, and I feel like it can be easily attacked as well, but kind of arguing that this can lead to a domino effect in the sense that if we're easily, not easily, I guess, but if we're willing to change like constitutional things, aspects like this, it can lead to further changes. And you can kind of make this theory that we're opening the doors to massive change in a way that we're not ready for. Like I was kind of thinking in
what you're saying.
direction, I guess, but I feel like the flaw of that argument is that it's all theoretical. That no one's saying that okay, because we changed this, constitutional.
There's not going to be evidence there.
Right, exactly. But I think it's one thing to consider too is that kind of this idea of why these constitutional laws exist in the first place, and should we be touching them and should we be changing them, because then one can argue that we can really change anything else based on the opinion of the people. So that's one side of it, but I mean I feel like
it's a good argument, but it's also easy to counter. If I was up against that and arguing like that it would lead to greater changes, I just ask for evidence and say the link chain was weak, and I think it's pretty easy to like lead to enough questioning in it that the contention wouldn't hold up.
Exactly. I think that's the one main flaw, is that it is just a theoretical argument.
It makes sense in theory, though.
It makes sense in theory, yeah. But in terms of I think there's something I was looking at here with the for pro, right? We're on pro right here. No, con. Sorry. I think there's something I wanted to bring up. Yeah, looking at like the oath thing, but also I would even look at like the fact that because people like underestimate how rigorous of a process it is, and you can even like kind of bring in the practicality of term limits in the sense that I think it takes like up to like, and don't quote me on this, but something like 4 months to get a justice in office, like by the time they go through the process. So you can argue that it's simply not practical to have all these rotations because presidents have enough on their plate that it's not something that we can have 8 justices while the 9th is still being sworn in. So kind of like you can kind of take the direction of just the practicality of it in the sense that it already has a rigorous process to become a justice, hence why they've achieved term limits. And even the idea that there really hasn't been much controversy other than the recent situations like with Kavanaugh and Ginsburg. But kind of this idea of how if there's too many vacancies, how that can cause more harm than good in the sense of how the government will run without those justices in office, I guess.
Okay, so I know we're not debating specifics of the plan, but like realistically, how would it work? Would like it go into effect immediately to the existing judges, or would it only be ones that were like doctored into the program?
That's a good question. I mean, I would assume, that's a really good question, actually. I mean,
also, if we're not debating the specifics of the plan, if like, for example, I use my 18-year evidence and someone questions me about what if it's not 18 years, am I allowed to just say we are not debating the specifics of this plan? This is just one commonly used example.
You can do that, but the thing is that you don't want to make it look like you're deflecting from having a response. Like you don't want to make it seem like because you have no answer, you're jumping there. But you are right though. Because the thing is that, I mean, I'm assuming, Lindsay, it's more in like the long term, like it's not based on our current justices that are in office now because they were sworn in with the intention of lifetime tenure. But Tim is right because you don't want to get too into that because then you're just going to kind of deviate away from what the debate is really about, is whether or not term limits should exist or not. And that's why I told, I think Anushka, to be careful of the argument supporting required retirement age as opposed to term limits, because if your evidence in a way is proving that we should have required retirement age, then that can, someone on the con side can win a case in that aspect as well, because now you're no longer proving that we should have term limits because there's other solutions. So it's an option to take, but it's really just focusing on the evidence on both sides with where we currently stand. All right, so let's go to you, Vanessa, because I want to make sure you're able to go before we go. So Vanessa, so you're, were you able to finish a pro case, or you're still kind of working through it right now?
I think I'm just gonna stay with 2 contentions right now.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go with 2 contentions. And I also feel like my second contention about like a biased judge and then like people would be happy if they're gone sooner. I feel it's a good idea, I feel like, but I'm really not sure how I'm supposed to like properly express the idea and how I'm supposed to actually make it like more impactful.
Wait, for which contention is this, or which idea did you have for this one?
Contention 2. It's highly likely that a judge would be biased. So if it ever happens that we have a judge like this, the inequality doesn't just continue because of lifetime tenure.
Yeah, I would just be careful because biases exist on both ends. So I feel like, one can argue on the con side that it kind of goes back to the idea of just, justice being out of touch with reality in the sense that having their real life experience being, in a time period that isn't our current time period, like especially those that have been in office for decades at this point. One can argue that they're biased as well because they only see the world from a minimal perspective. So I would just be careful with that because I think it could be interpreted on both ends. But I think it definitely has good potential. I mean, I think there is evidence that can support it. I would just be careful with how an opponent can use that evidence against you. And then, sorry, what were you thinking for your first contention? Or was that it?
That was it.
Oh, okay. And then, you said you were thinking of doing a second contention too, or you're still thinking through that one?
I have a first and second, and I was thinking about a third, but I think I'm just gonna.
Yeah, I feel like for this topic, two contentions is more strategic, just because there's so much building to it, and there's so much evidence that you want to bring in. I think it'd just be more strategic to spend the time on two as opposed to speed throughing them to get to three. Okay, perfect. So yeah, so if you and I think actually Vanessa, I think I left you feedback, but you have to unsubmit it, I think, to see it because it's mostly the comments. Oh, you did? Okay, perfect. All right, so if you didn't share your case with me yet or submit it yet, cough cough Ava, just make sure you do so at some point so that I can give you feedback. And next week, try to come prepared for a practice debate. If you can't get it on note cards because you're still kind of drafting through it, that's absolutely fine. But if you can, it's really better for you. So that way you can practice going through a debate the way you would in the day of the tournament. Any last minute questions or anything for me before we end?
Am I just not going to present my case?
Oh, sorry, what was that, Vanessa?
Am I just not going to present my case?
Oh, sorry, I thought you just wanted to walk us through it. Okay, go ahead.
Do I?
I mean, yeah, if everyone's okay with it. Yeah, go for it. It's just a couple of minutes. Sorry, I don't know why I thought you were just going to walk us through it like Lindsay did, but I'm glad you have a case to put together. Yeah, whenever you're ready, I'll start the
My time starts now. In the 228-year history of the Supreme Court, there have been 114 Supreme Court justices. Only 6 of them have been minorities. As the United States continues to grow and more immigrants enter the country, their opinions also need to be accounted for. The highest court in the nation, the Supreme Court, represents and makes many decisions that can greatly affect the lives of the people. When someone has a lifetime tenure, as the Constitution states now, their views will be represented for at least 2 to 3 decades, and there needs to be more diversity. Hi, my name is Vanessa Guo, and my partner and I are on the pro side of the resolution, and we believe that the Supreme Court justices should have term limits because having term limits allows for more diversity, and they'll prevent the views of a biased judge being represented for a long period of time. Contention 1. From ruling in schools of segregation unconstitutional to legalizing gay marriage, today's America has become one with vast differences from its historic counterpart. But when we delve deeper into the background of the justices in the court's past, it's easy to notice that there is still much progress to come in a clearly slanted Supreme Court. This is a quote by Smriti Thakar from the Collegiate Times. Most Supreme Court justices spend over 30 years on a bench. As I mentioned before, most Supreme Court justices have been white men, which inevitably results in underrepresentation, since it's more likely that a white man is appointed, as history shows. Since so many of these judges have been white men, this means that a lot of the decisions made will have been biased to support them. If a white man decides to stay on the bench for decades because they don't want to give up their spot, there isn't much room for diversity, seeing as there are only 9 judges at a time. With a growing society, especially in a country like America, where thousands, maybe even millions of immigrants come in to create new lives for themselves every year, there needs to be people that make choices that will benefit these minorities and make their lives better and more convenient. U.S. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor said that greater diversity on the High Court is important. Justices of varied backgrounds help justices to consider and understand issues differently based on their experience. She said, a different perspective can permit you to more fully understand the arguments that are before you and help you articulate your position in a way that everyone will understand. Sonia Sotomayor is the first Hispanic and Latino Supreme Court justice who has experience and knowledge of how the Supreme Court works and how certain decisions will benefit society. The fact that she has said diversity will certainly benefit the Supreme Court means I just lost that. Sorry. Moving on. Term limits will allow this to happen faster, where there will be new justices appointed only every 10 to 20 years. In the past 3 decades, all 6 out of the 114 Supreme Court justices were appointed. This shows term limits which will result in a shorter time span between each justice nominated, opens up many more opportunities for someone of color, a woman, or someone that didn't go to an Ivy League school, etc., to hold more slots in the Supreme Court. Having term limits means a new Supreme Court justice will replace the old, and seeing as society is improving in terms of discrimination, there's a high chance that a minority will have an opportunity to take a stand and represent their people in a country like America. Convention 2. Sometimes a Supreme Court justice can and will be biased, due to many aspects like race, gender, wealth, and current living situation. With term limits, we can lessen the amount of damage and discrimination expressed to allow for a more fair country with equal opportunities for all. For example, if the United States ever has a Supreme Court justice whose opinions are highly biased towards a certain group, that person should not deserve to have a position as honorable as the Supreme Court justice. Yet this person might get to stay Supreme Court justice for their whole lives and continue to make biased decisions, all because there are no term limits in place. A person like this will also receive much opposition from the people, resulting in conflicts between the people, government, etc. A recent example of this is Brett Kavanaugh, the most recent appointment to the Supreme Court by President Donald Trump. According to the Washington Post, Brett Kavanaugh will bring a lot of baggage with him to the Supreme Court, adding to the perception that the third branch of government is just as political as the other two. Kavanaugh's 50 to 48 confirmation and 3 months in which he was accused of sexual assault and lying under oath. There are 38 people that filed complaints against Kavanaugh, and according to a poll conducted by the Washington Post and ABC News, 51% of Americans disapprove of Kavanaugh being on the Supreme Court. These people will definitely be more content and happy knowing that he wouldn't be staying for life and won't be making decisions that won't benefit Americans for most likely over 30 years. Extreme pushback from the American citizens will not mean any progression in our judiciary system and the righteousness of our courts. Instead, it means conflicts and problems being brought up that could have been lessened through term limits. The fact that any nominee faces the problem of being doubted because of possible actions performed in the past means that they might not be fit for a position in the Supreme Court. These judges are supposed to be righteous, but how can one make righteous decisions if their actions do not reflect their justice they supposedly believe in? Thank you.
So that was about 5 minutes and 10 seconds. So we might definitely have to compromise a little bit in it, but I think it's pretty good. I think it was strategic to bring up the Kavanaugh situation just because it was so current. And one thing you can also kind of take the direction of how just kind of like the idea of the lack of power, I guess, that people have, in the sense that, even with so much pushback, he's now in there for life, and kind of taking the impact of that, I guess, and what's problematic about that as well, I think can drive the importance of it home. But yeah, no, I think it's pretty solid. I might go back and reread the second one so I can give you feedback on, because I don't know why I don't remember reading any of this stuff the first time.
I just added that in after.
Oh, okay. That's probably why. But yeah, so I'll definitely jump back in. Okay, so it was good for me to hear everyone's case. And again, next week, hopefully we'll be able to jump right into a practice debate. So I am giving you your warning now to come prepared next week. Again, if you can on note cards, if not, and you're still editing and revising, that's fine. But just kind of come prepared for that. I also posted the layout format on Classroom, like with the timing and stuff. So just to kind of get us in that mindset. Okay, any last minute questions or anything before we end? All right, thank you everyone, and hopefully I'll see you guys on Saturday, if not definitely next week.
Have a good day.
You too, good night.